Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below, subscribe to the channel before we get started. And I'm back. I was not here to stream yesterday, but I am here to stream today. I was actually giving a speech in Maryland, and it's probably a good thing that we did not have a long, drawn-out election night stream where we covered yet again, a disappointing set of results, because that's exactly what it was. It was a disappointing set of results. Now, we predicted that this would happen. We thought that Cameron would go down. Beshear's relatively a popular incumbent. He shouldn't be, but he is. And I think a lot of people predicted that he would go down, and he did. And Virginia, I think, was a little bit underwhelming because I think a lot of people did expect Republicans to at least hold the House, and they were unable to do so. It's not like much has changed. So you have this slate of elections that overall is really bad for Republicans, and it mainly does stem around two common denominators, because there were two common denominators that applied to every single race. It was money, and it was the fallout from the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, because you look at abortion and how it's dictating certain races. Democrats can put up garbage candidates. They can run on nothing but the issue, and still, somehow, they're going out there and they're winning. And Republicans need to mitigate this crisis, this electoral crisis that they're getting themselves into. And that's what Republican strategists need to be looking for. But instead, what are they doing? What are they going out there and blaming? Oh, Donald Trump is to blame for everything, apparently. He's to blame for, I've even seen people blame him for Ohio, blame him for Virginia, despite Virginia being Youngkin's own doing. Trump stayed completely out of Virginia, but still, Donald Trump is not to blame. We're going to talk about why that's the case, but still, the laziest people in the world, they are going out there and they are just trying to blame Donald Trump for it. Why exactly? Because they're desperate. They want to take him down. And I think that that ties into the other thing we just witnessed, the JV squad debate part 3. It was only down to, I believe, 5 people were on stage. You had DeSantis, you had Haley, you had Vivek, you had Tim Scott, and you had the largest part of the stage that took up 3/4 of it, Chris Christie. And it was yet again another disaster mixed with a snooze fest. And we will talk about the winners and the losers, and it seems like there are only 2 winners here. You have Donald Trump, because Donald Trump didn't have to go to that debate. That's why he won. It wasn't even because he necessarily said anything at his... Well, I'm not saying he didn't say any good things at his rally, but what I'm saying, he won the debate by default just by not attending that disaster. That's why he won the debate. On top of it, of the people that were there, Vivek Ramaswamy, once again, coming in hot. The first debate, he was pushing a lot of people's buttons, and it was fun to see, although I will admit he did come off a little gimmicky. He came off like a used car salesman at times. And even though I thought he won the first debate just because of what he was saying and the context of it, it is true that he didn't have the most complete performance. In the second debate, he was more calm. He was less, I guess you would say, abrasive. He wasn't pushing as many buttons. Not saying he wasn't good or that he wasn't still the best person on that debate stage, but nevertheless, Vivek, he didn't have the greatest night. Everybody could agree. Tonight, however, I feel like he really put it together. He kind of had like the novelty factor going for him, because he's kind of basically a novelty candidate. He's not going anywhere. He's not winning. He's not even going to rise in the polls, because everybody who loves his debate performance is more likely than not voting for Trump already, and they're not movable. And that's the way it goes. And the people that hate it are probably in the DeSantis camp, or they're in the Haley camp, and I'm sure that people are going to be flip-flopping between those two more so than the Louisiana Purchase would have been exchanged by the French and the Spanish back in the day, because that's what's happening on the more establishment side when it comes to the actual voters, not the influencers, because you have these people, they're going at it. They just want to vie for second place. The donors, they're playing hot potato. Is DeSantis doing well this day? Is Haley doing well this day? They're eating each other, which is hilarious to see. and Trump is just coasting. He's going to coast to a victory in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, a big one in Michigan, and then Super Tuesday is going to be a total wipeout of the opposition. But you look at Vivek Ramaswamy, he came in hot. He went out there and he said, the media should not be monitoring this debate. They should not be moderating it. We need an actual debate that's going to have proper moderators that the people would want to watch. And it's true. If you had Tucker Carlson, Rogan, and Musk monitoring a debate or moderating, same thing basically. But do you think Donald Trump may actually show up to that one? I think there's a higher chance he would, for the record. Trump is not going to go to these snooze fests because they're a setup trap. You're putting him on the same stage with people like Hutchinson or people like Doug Burgum, who have no business running, and even Chris Christie this time. It is narrowing as we get closer, but Trump's lead is also growing. He's up 50 points nationally to the point where why is he going to really risk anything where he has nothing to lose? You could say it's out of cowardice all you want, and while debates may be good content here and there, he just has too much to lose, and whatever's working for him now is working. He keeps gaining after every debate because he lets them eat each other. He lets them have their snooze fest where they repeat over and over again these Reagan-esque talking points. And yeah, Vivek is the one that's the attack dog. Vivek is the one that's the stand-in, and he's been on fire. And he was the only one on a lot of issues that really took a stand. Foreign policy, called out corruption in Ukraine, which is 100% true. The media never talks about it. They used to. We've seen the social media and search engines bury old news articles where they went out there and they were talking about how Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, this, that, and the other thing, all these business deals. Now that's buried because now we got to beat the evil Russia. That's what they're saying. And Nikki Haley's foreign policy, she needs to go back in the time machine. She needs to be deported to 2004, and she can stay there because that's really where her policy belongs. And Vivek is somebody who is relatively intelligent. He is witty. He goes out there and he gets the one-liners, but on top of that, he gets the one-liners in there this time without sounding too much like a used car salesman, which I think was good for him. It's not going to really affect the state of the race whatsoever, but man, he went in and Nikki Haley was seething. She didn't shake his hand after the debate. I think that was the only grouping that did not exchange, handshakes or whatever, but still, either way, these people are getting exposed on how weak they are in real time. We need Donald Trump. That's who we need. And he's showcasing that in real time just by not even being there because everybody else just looks foolish. Everybody else looks dumb. It's a clown car. I mean, Vivek doesn't, but at the same time, he's not going to go anywhere. His support base in terms of the debates is mainly in the Trump camp anyways, and he may be their second choice, but he's not going to be their main choice with Trump running. He's just not. And that's not to say Vivek doesn't have policy blind spots. I'm not saying I agree with him on everything, although he is somebody who's going out there with these interesting policy proposals and is talking about things in a way where no other Republican is right now. So he does deserve some credit for it. And on top of that, you look at this whole thing. Vivek Ramaswamy said the right thing about the anti-BDS legislation. Because it is true, it is a dangerous, slippery slope about the First Amendment. When you get rid of that, anybody who says anything about elections or anybody who says anything about the mistreatment of the 1-6 prisoners, they're going to be doomed an insurrectionist. They're going to be, fined or charged with something based off of speech, and we can't have that. And it's a good thing that he was the one that went out there and was talking about that, and he said the right thing. He did. He said the right thing about pretty much everything in the debate, which is good. Ron DeSantis, we have to talk about him because he is in second place. And we like to dunk on Nikki Haley after these debates. And it's important to realize that Nikki Haley rises after every debate despite being insufferable. Why? Well, because she's appealing to a very slim portion of the base. She's maxing out that support. She is going to be hated by the rest of the base, by the rest of the Republican Party, the Republican primary electorate, and that's fair, but she is gaining from these debates because she's polarizing. Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, is not polarizing. He goes out there, and it's not like he says anything policy-wise that's all that wrong. I agree with probably a lot of what he says on paper, although it's very vague. It doesn't, represent the bold vision that somebody like Donald Trump does. But furthermore, he comes off like he's just reading these slogans, and he's taking an L in doing so because he's not really getting the firepower that he needs. This guy is down by 40 points nationally. He's down by more than that. And you can deny the polls all you want, but you're living in fantasy land. You are, because every single poll shows the same thing. I'll be nice to him. I'll say he's down 20. That's not true. He's down by far more. But still, the bottom line is true. He's not really shining. This is a problem that he has. He's not witty. He never jumps in. He never retorts. He always repeats the same talking points he probably has rehearsed in front of the mirror 30,000 times over the past week. And even then, he comes off a little awkward and nervous when he's doing it. He's not presidential material. He's not somebody that's really going to make it on the big stage. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure why I ever brought up the fact that he would be a presidential contender, watching him out there with these other people who also, for the most part, are not presidential material. But Nikki Haley, I despise her more than I despise DeSantis, although her support base is not as insufferable because it's non-existent online. I will say that overall, you look at Nikki Haley, she's witty. I don't like her, but she'll retort, she'll respond, she's vicious, she's dumb, but at the same time, she knows rhetorically when to chime in at the right time to appeal to her base. DeSantis cannot do that. DeSantis is not somebody who gets in the mud. I'm not even asking him to get in the mud with Donald Trump. I'm just saying if he's out there with these people, he wants to shine. He wants to prove to Trump's base, Trump's voter base, that he's any different than these people, and he just fades away. He's like the fading behind the bush meme. He goes away. No pun intended, by the way, but that's exactly what he's doing. He's going out there and he's saying things, he's saying some slogans, but it's not helping him. And after every single debate, he doesn't rise up. Why is that? Why does he keep falling in the polls? Why is Nikki Haley rising? Why is Nikki Haley taking his support, his donor money? Because DeSantis just does not have the it factor. You could say, well, that shouldn't matter, but it does. It does. Politics in general is, in a way, it's a sport. You have to be good at it. I mean, you can't just, he says the right thing vaguely. That doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean much. You have to appeal to the American people. And if your support base is going to sit here and say, well, anybody who opposes him is low IQ, they just don't get it. It's like, well, DeSantis apparently, according to these people, can't connect with people that are very dumb. They're trashing the own base as dumb, but fine, let's even accept their presumption is true that the Republican voter base is dumb. DeSantis not being able to appeal to those people speaks more volumes about how awful he is compared to how awful the Republican base is. It's absolutely disastrous the way these people live on a different planet where they think DeSantis is the star candidate. He's not. You could say he didn't mess up. Fine, I'll agree with you. It wasn't like he bombed like Marco Rubio against Chris Christie. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but still, the guy's awkward. He speaks only in slogans, and it's not something that really is resonating with voters. There's a reason why he's lost over 2/3 of his support since before he announced his run. If he didn't even announce his run and he just stayed in Florida and didn't run for president, he probably would be polling twice as high still in these hypothetical polls than he is polling right now. That's the way it is. But Nikki Haley, like I said, stuck in 2004. That's the way these people operate, and they get angry, they get antsy, and they get vicious when they're called out on it by somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy. And Haley went out there and, she got in the mud with them. And then she said something of, because Vivek called her Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, which is accurate. It's funny. Also, I'm surprised he didn't take a stab at DeSantis being somebody in heels, which he is. He's just himself in heels. But either way, what it comes down to it is the fact that Nikki Haley responded and she's like, well, actually, they're 5-inch heels and I use them for ammunition. What the hell is that supposed to mean? They're not weapons. They're just heels. They're shoes. Like, I just don't get it. But either way, a lot of these people just went out there, made a fool out of themselves. Why is Chris Christie even there? I don't get it. Why is he running? he should be irrelevant. He's a bloated water buffalo. We say the same thing about Cenk Uygur back in the day, and Cenk is basically the Democrat or the far left Chris Christie. Christie is like the Republican establishment's Cenk Uygur. Bloated, water buffalo behavior, just off-putting to the average person. And at least unlike Cenk, Christie's going to be on the ballot. Cenk is actually trying to run for president right now, which is pretty ironic, and he's not born in America. He's not a natural-born citizen, so he can't run for president, so it doesn't exactly make sense what he's trying to do. But nevertheless, Chris Christie, why is he there? I mean, he didn't take as many jabs at Trump directly as I thought he would, but nonetheless, do people actually think this guy has a shot? What is he exactly in this race for? That's the real question. What are any of these people in this race for? Because none of them have a chance at taking down Donald Trump. So why not just stop wasting the resources, get behind Trump? And on top of that, all that donor money these people are spending, that could have gone to flip Virginia, and we would have won Virginia. That could have gone to Kentucky. So these two are intertwined. And the Republicans have this culture of losing, but it's not because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump won Kentucky by 30 points twice. He won Kentucky. He won some counties by close to 60 that Republicans lost last night. So you're going to sit back here and tell me that Donald Trump is the problem? No, the Republican Party is the problem. And you could say, well, why did he endorse Cameron? First of all, I don't even think Cameron's the worst candidate on paper. Beshear's just that popular. And Republicans have allowed him to be, which is kind of their own problem. So that's really on them. That's really on their strategy. Blunder on their part. But nonetheless, he's going to be there for 4 more years. He is a figurehead. But still, the people that are trying to sit back here and blame this on Donald Trump are just delusional. Donald Trump is wildly popular in the state of Kentucky by every single metric. Appalachia is as red as it is thanks to Donald Trump. And the fact that this wasn't a total blowout for Beshear, you could argue is because of Donald Trump in a positive regard. The last Beshear to run for re-election ended up winning by like 25 points, and that was back in 2011 when you had an unpopular Obama. And that's just the way these governors' elections work. They're not as polarized. It doesn't mean you have to sit back there and foam at the mouth like a TDS patient and blame Donald Trump for everything. By that logic, Trump gets credit for Mississippi. Reeves was really touting the Trump stuff later on. I mean, Cameron did to an extent, but he was rising while he was doing it. And you look at Louisiana, Trump's choice there won by a ridiculous margin, and Republicans had a very, very, very good night there. And on top of that, people are like, well, these other Republicans won down ballot. That's because of Trump endorsing Cameron. They're being disingenuous. They really are. If Trump endorsed those other candidates, they probably would have performed the same exact margin, if not even better. This all had to do with the top of the ticket, and that's where it counts. So enough is enough with these people. They are liars. They are disingenuous, and they are desperate. That's the biggest thing of all. They are desperate because they are losing, and they're losing badly. And that's why Donald Trump won the debate by not being there. Now, Tim Scott is just boring. He's dull. He doesn't really say anything of note. And like I said, if he was white, he would not be there. He would not be running for president if he was white. In fact, he never would have ran for office in the first place if he was. In fact, he went to the Democrats in South Carolina trying to run for them. They told him to get in line because there was, all these people that looked exactly like Tim Scott on the Democrat side. Then he went to the Republican office and they said, well, we want you to run. We'll see. Hopefully you can win and expand diversity or whatever. So he was a diversity hire from day one. And people get mad when I say it, but it's true. He's admitted to this. He's admitted to using race to advance his own career. And he's only on that debate stage because of one thing. And that's really all it is. I mean, there's a reason why John Boozman, who's basically Tim Scott but from Arkansas, is not running for president. Tim Scott has basically admitted, even while he's debating, it's like, I can bring the diversity to the party. So basically he's admitting he's only on stage for one reason. I mean, that's behavior that would be obviously encouraged and celebrated on the other side, not on our side. So Tim Scott takes the L. If he was white, he'd be working at McDonald's. End of story. Trump won the debate. Vivek won the debate. And I'm sure we'll talk more and more about the debate in terms of super chats, but I wanted to talk about the election because obviously abortion was a thing, and we'll get to abortion in a minute, but money also was a big problem, and we touched base on that. And the RGA, what is the RGA doing? And the RNC, both are to blame. You could say, well, Trump said something positive about Ronna McDaniel. I don't care. She sucks. I literally don't care. The bank your vote thing, maybe there's promise there for 2024, but other than that, she sucks. She does. I mean, she doesn't know how to run a party. If you have a GM of a football team that has a losing record, you don't keep them around. You don't do that for cycles around cycles upon cycles. You can't have that. And as a result, she's there, and she's somebody who I believe is a snake and definitely hurt Republicans across the board, especially in the state of Virginia, where they asked for slightly more funding and then barely lost. But still, that's part of the problem. The RGA. Kim Reynolds is too busy hanging out with Ron DeSantis because apparently both of them are trying to be the governor of Iowa. She is the governor of Iowa. DeSantis is pretending he's the governor of Iowa. It's not really working out too well for him. But nonetheless, she's endorsing him because it's a desperate move. I mean, she already was hanging out with him. I don't think this moves the needle any more than her originally hanging out with him did. If anything, you could say, well, maybe this is a ploy to get some Haley supporters on board with DeSantis. Like I said, they're going to be playing hot potato with some of these people throughout the primary process. It's like the Louisiana Purchase. Is it, in this day and age, is it owned by the French? Is it owned by the Spanish? The French, the Spanish. They sold it back and forth how many times to each other in the 1700s. This is the same exact concept here, except it's between a select few in the base who are not fully on board with Donald Trump. A lot of them will end up voting for him, though. Make no mistake about it when it's all said and done. But either way, as of right now, there's a segment of the base that does not support him, the neo-never-Trumpers. And even though they may be more Trump-friendly than they were in 2016, they're still parking their support in one of those lanes. But either way, that base as a whole is dwindling, and Trump is gaining, which is a very good thing. So overall, like I said, whatever we see happening there will happen on that debate stage. What happens in the fallout? Who rises in the polling? I don't know who rises. Haley probably rises more because she has the most polarizing performances, and I despise her. But there is a segment of the party that does not, and she will potentially coalesce some of their support. But you look at Kim Reynolds endorsing DeSantis, will that move the needle? Not as much as people think. We've seen polls that show otherwise. She's also the most unpopular governor in the entire country right now by approval rating. Now, granted, it is a very good time for governors. All governors have an approval rating in the mid-40s or higher. Tate Reeves even was able to coast to victory despite being despised less than a year ago. If that election was held in 2022, I mean, it's possible with off-year turnout that Reeves would have actually gone down to Presley. But nonetheless, he won. Governor Peter Griffin is there. It was the one good result from last night. But still, I mean, you're looking at this, the RGA, what are they doing? I mean, you see the fact that Ron DeSantis is criticizing Republicans for going down. What the hell did he do to help Cameron? He wouldn't even endorse Cameron. He endorsed Cameron's opponent, who wasn't even going to win, who's from a family of mega donors, just so he could possibly, and his supporters could possibly look back and say, ha ha, look, Trump, your candidate ended up losing to the popular incumbent governor, even though your candidate beat ours in a primary single-handedly by like 40 points, which is also a preview of what's to come in the presidential primary, by the way. Oh, well, he lost, so if you nominated our candidate, they would have won. The candidate that spent millions of dollars to get in third place in a primary in Kentucky? Really? It's not exactly how this is going to work whatsoever, but these people are dumb, and it shows. So there's really no way to chalk it up where it's Trump's fault, it's Trump's fault. No, it's a lot of people's faults. I think Kentucky is really more so Matt Bevin's fault because Matt Bevin got in there in 2015 and was hated. He didn't know how to do his job properly in a way that could relate to the average Republican or new Republican in Kentucky, in eastern Kentucky, who overwhelmingly voted for Trump but might have a little bit of down ballot lag because they're ancestral Dems. I mean, that's kind of where Matt Bevin went wrong. He lost, and when you're an incumbent governor, you probably win unless you're despised. Beshear was not despised. So if anybody shoulders this loss goes on, it's not Donald Trump's, it's probably Matt Bevin's overall more so than anybody else, because nobody's going to take down Beshear realistically unless he had a drop in approval, which he didn't. And Cameron's campaign wasn't all that good, but nobody else running really had all that good of a campaign. I mean, is it possible that if he did everything correctly, he would have won? Yeah, but I mean, election day turnout was pretty low, and he did not inspire a lot of turnout. And the Republicans that did turn out and helped the down-ballot Republicans win big, a lot of them did split their tickets because Beshear is a figurehead. He's like a king. He doesn't have a lot of power, but he's there, and he's the son of a popular former governor, so they're going to elect him. That's how this thing works. So you look at Kentucky, you see that there. Ohio's a disaster. We have to talk about abortion, and we'll get to super chats, and I'm sure the super chats will talk about this. So Ohio voters love their legal weed now. They love abortion, and they also love Donald Trump for some whatever reason. And it shows that we have a culture that is in decline when it comes to abortion. You have a lot of people that think it's completely normal. Not even just like the first 6 weeks even. They want to embed it in the Constitution to the point where you're going to have legalized abortion in Ohio, which is a state that's basically on its way to being more red than a state like Missouri at the national level. That state is going to have abortion with very few restrictions at all. There's a major messaging problem that's going on with Republicans, that's going on with the pro-life movement, and even in Virginia, where Republicans fell short. Did they do well compared to, the 2020 election in some of these seats? Yes, but that's not the point. The bottom line was Democrats ran awful candidates with awful campaigns, but they had one thing in common. All of them hammered home abortion. Republicans were talking about the economy, education, crime. Youngkin has a high approval rating. And still, in a district that was neck and neck in 2022, the Republicans almost lost to an OnlyFans thot who used OnlyFans or some equivalent of that to raise funds for her political campaigns. They almost lost to a woman who peed outside on TikTok for reproductive free. I mean, these people are insane, and they're getting close. You talk about candidate quality. Quality doesn't exactly matter. You have the curated people in a lab that are, Youngkin's people who won big in Virginia or had an upset victory a couple years ago. Didn't matter. So Trump's not the common denominator here at all. If anything, Trump helped Republicans in Kentucky. Wasn't enough. Help Republicans out in a state like Louisiana, even though that was going to go red regardless. Probably helped out Tate Reeves as well in Mississippi. But the number one common denominator besides money, because Reeves was the only one who outspent his opposition, even then it was really close, but it was the issue of abortion. Republicans campaigned on a 15-week ban. Youngkin touted it, and if that was not in play, Republicans probably win a sizable majority in Virginia in both chambers. But they went out there and they did not. And that's also why you saw Dan Kelly lose by a lot in Wisconsin. You saw in Pennsylvania, Republicans lose. All the Democrats did was hammer home the messaging. Abortion, abortion, abortion. We're pro-choice. They want to take away women's rights, they say. Even though abortion is a very complex issue. It's not about the rights of women. It's about the rights of the unborn. That's the message the right's been trying to get across for decades upon decades, but still it's falling on deaf ears. And this is kind of a problem. Even Republicans are either A, not turning out for these referendums. I know the exit poll said you had a Biden electorate in Ohio. I don't know if that's true. The exit polls can be flawed, but still turnout was abysmal, and not turning out does count as apathy. And that's a major problem. And it did seem like the energy shifted in 2022 around Dobbs. And I'm not saying Dobbs is fully responsible for 2022. I thought spending was awful across the board, Republicans in these divisive primaries, and that might be part of why you saw what you saw in Kentucky. But nonetheless, abortion is an issue. It is an issue for a lot of these Republicans that they don't know how to message. Even when it comes to this 15-week ban, it sounds like something that should be common sense. Should be common sense to ban it a lot earlier than that. But still, it's falling on deaf ears to these voters for some reason, because they either just don't understand the topic or they're just that depraved and we have a society that is unwell. So until we have a society that is well, we need to adjust the messaging. I'm not saying cave completely, even changing the words around. You could have had a more restrictive ban touted in Virginia and still won if you said second trimester common sense restrictions instead of 15-week ban. The word ban is a little risque. It's a little forceful. And that does definitely get in the heads of a lot of these voters and energize the other side more than it probably should. And that's the problem. The bottom line is we should have a ban. We should be able to agree to some ban at a certain point early in the pregnancy. You have the fact that you have a heartbeat, you have brain waves. That doesn't even take the conception argument into account, which is valid, and that's where it should be. Life begins at conception. But nonetheless, even looking at the heartbeat, looking at the brain waves, that's like 6 weeks. Talking about when the baby can feel pain, that is well in the early part of that of the first trimester, or at least in the middle of the first trimester, some pain is able to be felt. I mean, that's murder. If you could feel pain and you end a life of anything, it doesn't matter how big they are, how small they are, that is still murder, especially if it's human life. This is a problem. And Republicans are not capitalizing on it. Now, there's other things we need to do. I think the main goal should not be to tout unpopular policy as like a X week ban or whatever. First of all, soften up the language. The left softens up the language. They'll go out there and they're not going to say they're anti-life. They'll say they're pro-choice. And it works for them because they're able to have people say, well, I don't actually agree with abortion. I wouldn't get one, but, people should have the right to this, that, and the other thing. And they've been able to shift the Overton window on the issue vastly just by their diction. So we need to actually use our own diction to our advantage, soften it up, but, be able to take a stand. I think Carrie Lake did a great job on her issues page. Even a lot of people who are not fans of Carrie Lake, when I posted her issues page, they agreed that she had the right take on messaging when it comes to abortion, because she's like, it is a state issue, for one. If you're running at the national level, saying it's a state issue, X weeks in each state is what it is, but we need to do what we could do to, protect life, lower the number, and give women more options that are viable so they don't choose to go out there and, murder their offspring. And as a result, I think that's more a solid messaging that can win rather than, we're going to ban it this week, and it's more like negative messaging. And I'm not really a fond of having to do this per se, but this is the bottom line. If we're unable to win because we just LARP as hardliners on the issue and we don't win anything, we're going to have Roe v. Wade codified into law, and it's never going to be overturned. You're going to have a court that's packed in favor of the Dems. They're going to have a mandate. You're going to have abortion rates skyrocket. This is not something we want to happen, so we have to be careful. For the sake of many lives, we have to be careful about how we market this issue, and in turn, we can get people that are more on the fence or that say, maybe they're against late-term abortion. We can sort of get them into our camp if they agree with us on other issues, and hopefully over time we can continue changing the narrative within the culture to the point where a majority would support such a ban. And that's what it comes down to. And that's my take on that. I don't think it's that controversial. If you have a problem with what I said, I just think that you need to understand that we are in a crisis here. And it's not about sacrificing principle. It's about understanding reality. The post-Dobbs era is something we need to navigate probably differently than we navigated before if we want to remain viable. I mean, that's the way it works. Otherwise, we're going to keep losing. We're going to lose our country in every single aspect. I'm not a fan of it. I don't want that to happen. But if we actually want to work towards ending this ritual called abortion, this you could even say satanic ritual, you'd be correct. The Church of Satan agrees, by the way. But if you want to get rid of this from happening, this epidemic, you want to abolish it once and for all, you're going to have to be tactical. That's how it works. Jason Christie for $5 says, I think Democrats will start to get cocky and throw 24. I mean, it's possible. I was thinking about this. It's like tanking. You're losing so much that they're just going to expect it. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true to a certain extent. They're just going to say, well, Trump is too toxic anyways to win. Look at the midterms. Look at Kentucky. They'll operate under the same DeSimp framework. And as a result, Republicans could be sitting on a gold mine of energy, but we'll have to see. Jeremy G says, did you hear about Michigan football lately? Yeah, I know they're in some sort of a scandal. I don't really know the full ins and outs of it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not a fan of Michigan football in the slightest, but if they're just going out there and stealing signs, everybody does it. They're just getting caught. That's the main thing I see. And maybe some universities don't have the resources to fund people attending other games and sign watching. But in reality, that's their problem. Like, just go buy a ticket and binoculars if you want to. They always do this. I'm sure they do it in the NFL. They do it in the NCAA. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Yes Man for 10 sends a bunch of Latin, I believe. Thank you for that super chat. John Waffle says, very disappointing result. Now we have two federal shills in political office from Virginia. The Virginia GOP is weak and it's not going to get any better. Well, I will say they didn't perform that badly, all things considered. Now, I will say this. They did drop the ball. It could have been a lot better for them than it was, and it was not. So they did take some L's there. They did make some miscalculations, and I think now they basically have, I hope, learned their lesson. Mike Oxhard, okay, I see what you did there, says, Vivek won the debate when Nikki Haley called him scum. What an honor for him. Yeah, I mean, it's true. They get mad. They get backed into a corner. They lash out. That's how these things work because they are losing. Let's see. It's just the way it is. Nikki Haley, Vivek is like the antidote because he's going out there and he's also ironically Indian American. Not like it really matters, but it's kind of funny that he's like the anti-Haley, and he's anti-Haley on literally every single possible, most policies. Him on immigration's a little weak from what I've seen, but what I've seen rhetorically from him at these debates is very positive. Crunchkey says, what do you think about Vaush? Would you ever debate him? Also, rough night in New Jersey, but most of those wins were flukes. Will be easy to win back in 25. Yeah, the fact that you didn't have a top of the ticket definitely hurt Republicans. And I predicted that Ed Durr would lose. He did. That's true. And in terms of Vaush, I've debated him technically before. I was on some panel that he was on a couple of years ago. But I since then have not debated him or really cared to see anything that he's had to say. Imperium Magistrate says most presidents are bland. Look at Bush Sr. or Biden. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're bland. If you're 40 points behind, you're doing something wrong. Biden was able to win because he had a lot of the party clout behind him. And Bush Sr. was Reagan's protege. Reagan was popular. He rode that wave. This is not even the old days. This is the current state in the game. Biden was able to go out there and win partially because of COVID, partially because of the election system, and also because he was a reaction to somebody like Donald Trump, who was very polarizing. So I do think it's different, and if you want to beat Trump in a primary, you're going to have to go out there and be polarizing. And if you want to go toe-to-toe with Biden, and if you can't contrast yourself in the energy level, that's also going to be a massive problem because you have to go out there and energize the base. And I can't really see Ron DeSantis going out there and doing that, especially when he's lost 2/3 of his own base since the beginning of the spring. So Drew Valesky says if Reeves didn't change the flag, he would have won by 30. Exactly. I think that's a big thing. He said, let the people vote on it, which is kind of a cowardice take. I mean, he should have gone out there and said, no, it's the state flag. It's tradition. We're going to keep it. Personally, I thought the old flag was kind of ugly. But the fact that they changed it out of political correctness is a major problem. And it was not a problem for all these years. It was not a problem. Nobody raised the problem until you had this woke wave in 2020, and they change all these names of everything. They're changing history. The Washington Redskins are now the Washington Commanders. For a while, they were the Washington football team. And again, why would they need to change it? Nobody, for the most part, was offended except a few woke white liberals who were throwing a temper tantrum. They never wondered why the team had the name or what the context was. They were just mad. They were a part of the outrage mob, and too many people gave into the outrage mob, and that's a problem. So you're seeing that there. Now you have Native American groups that are suing the Washington now Commanders to change the name back to the Washington Redskins. So I don't know how that's going to go, but it kind of shows the state of the game right now. Jadit McSwag says, Vivek said there were 2 Cheneys and Heels on stage. Did he say that? I didn't catch that, partially because I was rewatching it on 2X, but if he did say that, that's actually pretty funny. I mean, it's true. BRGRS says, what are your thoughts on Tim Sheehy? Do you think he could beat Tester? I don't think he's very popular. I don't think he's that popular either. Everyone hates on Rosendale. Do they think Sheehy would have won in 2018? I mean, it was a winnable race, but it wasn't prioritized. And that's partially why Matt Rosendale went down. He's won statewide several times since then. I don't think he would lose in a presidential year. He's very solid on the issues, but they tend to be obsessed with this divisive primary with Sheehy out there. So, I mean, the guy is like a Chad, like looks-wise, but he's also a defense contractor's wet dream. Like, you could tell by the aesthetic of the candidate, based off of who's supporting him. I don't think he's exactly going to be all that, and I don't think that he should be the nominee. They call him Twin Cities Tim, because he's from Minnesota. He's lived there a lot. I know he's got ties to both states, but why doesn't he run for Senate in Minnesota if he's so good? But nonetheless, it is what it is. I don't think that he's necessarily all that great of a candidate, and I think he's being hyped up by a lot of people to be a lot better than he really is. And if he loses to Tester, they would just say, well, Rosendale would have lost by more. And it's like, probably not. BNDR says, polls were quite accurate. Good news for Trump. I mean, that's also true. And I think that if Donald Trump was on the ballot in Kentucky, Bashir would have got decked. And I think that maybe you could say Republicans wouldn't have done as well in Virginia, but that's not a pro-Trump state. But enough swing states are pro-Trump over Biden to the point where Trump is still that solid general election candidate. He is. And when it comes down to it, my predictions, for the record, were spot on. We were off by 1 in the state Senate in Virginia. We were off by 2 in the state House. But other than that, we nailed Mississippi's margin. We nailed Pennsylvania's margin. We called New Jersey correctly. So Democrats may even gain. They did. And when it comes down to Kentucky, I said Cameron would lose. He did. Now, my margin was off by a couple of points because I don't think we thought that election day turnout would have been as low as it was. And I think that definitely played a role. And if I knew that, the prediction would have been different. And I released the video a day before. But I see the comment section flooded by all these crazy people, mainly on the left, saying, he's wrong about everything. He's wrong about everything. And it's like, I had my best year since probably 2021. And well, it's not really saying a whole lot, but looking at the predictions wise, it was pretty much on point across the board. And you still had comments, like 30 plus comments of these people just saying, you were wrong, you were wrong. I was not wrong. I was right. I was right about all the governor's races this year. I was right about all the referendums, the major ones this year. I was right about all the state Supreme Court races this year. I got the Virginia House of Delegates off by 2 out of 100 members. The state Senate wrong by 1 out of 100 members. Both were decided by less than a combined like 10,000 votes. And you're going to sit up here and critique my predictions for being inaccurate? These people are clowns, man. These people are just clowns. They don't really have any conviction. It's just, we don't like rep. We don't like rep. We're going to go aim for his head. Even when he's right. Even when he has a great slate of predictions, we're still going to aim for his head and say he was wrong about everything and blame Donald Trump for everything. It's like you saw a lot of these DeSantis people actively cheering for Daniel Cameron to lose behind the scenes. A lot of them were gloating about it, which is bizarre. It's like, why didn't they support the guy? I didn't see any of these people propping him up. Probably because they were told not to, because had he won, it would make Trump look bad. These people are not team players. They're desperate losers. And yeah, I mean, you had, for example, Laura Loomer go out there and say, it would be a shame if Republicans didn't vote in Virginia. And that was stupid too. I thought she did a lot of great work over the past weekend confronting these influencers in person, but saying, oh, well, we need to lose Virginia so Youngkin doesn't run for president. Youngkin was never going to run for president. He's not stupid like DeSantis is. He's not delusional. And that was going to be true regardless. I mean, the filing deadlines have already passed. He might run in 2028. I'm not going to be supporting him in 2028, but I want what's best for the people of Virginia, and it's better for them if they have a conservative trifecta that might be a little weak compared to the total Democrat control that they've had for quite some time. So that is what it is. But you have a lot of like weird tribal politics, but it's mainly on the DeSantis side. With rare exception, it is on the DeSantis side. These people are not team players. They actively were rooting for Cameron's downfall, and they ended up getting it thanks to their right-hand woman leading the RGA. So Sam Madsen says Presley ran to the right of Reeves on COVID, which is pretty funny. Yeah, he almost pulled it off, but he didn't. I think a lot of people just don't trust Presley because of the partisan lean. And when it comes down to it, Presley was not able to really go out there and differentiate himself enough from the Democrats. I mean, when it came to like the whole transgender stuff, he was flip-flopping on it. He wasn't exactly all that solid, even for Mississippi, and he wasn't able to go out there and defeat an unpopular Tate Reeves. Captain Beefheart says Burgum wasn't there because Christie ate him. True. Very true. But it's a disaster. We have a lot of things going on in this party. They don't know how to win. They don't know what they're doing. All these things are true. And when I look at the clown car that was the debate stage, that exemplifies it. Not Donald Trump at a rally. That's what exemplifies the fact that they're losing. You have a disconnect between the donor class and what the base actually wants. And if you were able to somehow fuse that together and, have party unity per se, you'd be able to win a lot more. But instead, they struggle to turn out certain voters. And that's their problem. I mean, how many voters voted for Donald Trump in Kentucky that stayed home for Daniel Cameron? A lot of them did. A lot of them. So, let's see. Brandon Fairbanks says, I don't see last night as the major L. Some are making it out to be. We need to point out the leftist agenda on abortion, make them defend it. Well, yeah, I agree. When it comes down to the late-term abortion stuff, like, that needs to be hammered because that's not popular. Polls say that's not popular. And that should be something that's outrightly opposed. I mean, you have people up until birth, when the baby's crowning, they're able to do disgusting things that in any just society would be viewed as morally reprehensible and should be illegal. So 100%, they need to go out there and do that. But they do need to amend their messaging because their messaging is not that great on the issue. It's not. They need to come from a more, I'd say, a softer angle, not in like a I'm caving type of way, but in like a softer approach, the way that Democrats do it. Because the Democrats do it and they're winning. We don't do it and we're losing. It's kind of a problem. So we got to be careful about the messaging, about how we get our points across. That's the only way we're going to win. And that's the only way you're going to actually be able to stop all abortion from happening. And that's the way it is. So, any more super chats here? Seems like we got every single one so far. We have 500 live viewers. If anybody has anything to say about the debate or 2023, now would be the time. But I do agree that last night the results were not that bad. They were not that unexpected. But still, they were disappointing to see, especially in Virginia. Because I think at least if they held the state house, people would be able to say they got some sort of victory, nothing changed, you didn't see Democrats gain anything. But because they gained that Virginia state house, that was like the moral L, even if it was just like one seat, even if they're not really getting anything done to begin with. And now, if Youngkin wants to pass anything, he's going to have to cave more and more to the Democrats in the state to get it done, and that's not good. So, we'll see. Sam Madsen said a transgender candidate in the Virginia Senate won a Biden plus 27 district by just 3 points. That says a lot about what even many Democrats think of that issue. Yeah, I mean, still the fact that they were able to go out there and win, not fond of it, but it is true that their candidates were awful. And if it wasn't for that, the way Republicans handled the issue of abortion, among other things. I do believe that that candidate in Virginia Senate would have gone down. But instead, you almost saw OnlyFans women win, women who pee outside. You saw a woman who claims to be a man or vice versa end up winning, even if it was just by 3 points. I mean, still, the early voting thing, I mean, Republicans did vote early. They did actually do pretty well in the popular vote overall in Virginia, but still in these competitive races, that definitely did hurt their possibilities when it came down to the whole Dobbs v. Jackson fallout. They're still dealing with it. I mean, special elections were going our way before then, every single one. And I'm not saying it was the only main factor for the wave dying, but it was definitely a contributing factor. I think that popular Democrat incumbent governors are going to be able to withstand wave years. We even saw that in Arkansas in 2010. I guess that's also Donald Trump's fault somehow, some way. I don't know. But these people probably will try to blame him for everything. So Spence Colas says the key ballot harvesting GOP must get better. Well, they have to, and they have a year to prepare, and they got to start preparing now. I mean, we've seen the past year, their early voting in Kentucky wasn't the worst, but their election day turnout was absolutely abysmal, and that's got to change. John Waffle H2P says thoughts on the mess in Philadelphia. I don't know what you're referring to. You're talking about the mayor's race there? Because the Republicans actually outperformed expectations, but they still got debt because Philadelphia is Philadelphia. Chopper Rocker says New York City Council flipped a seat in the Bronx. It says a lot about the New York GOP. New Jersey GOP also needs a makeover, zero funding. It's true. New York, maybe it's true New York will revert a little bit at the presidential level. Could New York be the next Texas? I think it could be. You never know. And that does need to be talked about because that is a good news, a good little tidbit there. Because you look at what happened in Suffolk County, you look at what happened even in some of these boroughs of New York City. They're going out there and they're flipping seats in the Bronx. I mean, Brooklyn is one thing because you have like a lot of Orthodox Jews that if you have like a state house district there, maybe it does vote Republican. But the Bronx is heavily Hispanic. It's not exactly typically Republican friendly. And if they're able to do that and you see potentially Hispanic shift there, that's a good sign for 2024. You'll probably see New York move to the right. You'll probably see Texas as well stagnate. You'll see Arizona. Demography is not going to be the main thing working against you so long as you're able to, in the intermediary, make up that whatever 2 to 3% gain with Hispanics. But you got to go out there and you got to appeal to the base as well. I mean, you got to be able to get those white working class voters out to vote in these Rust Belt states first and foremost, or Republicans are not going to be able to go out there and win the election. So it does come down to turnout, and I think you need an energy factor for turnout. And you get that with Donald Trump in these places more so than anything else. I mean, it's true. It doesn't matter if the candidate he endorsed underperformed. It's like that candidate he endorsed is not him. Maybe he did one rally for them. How many people that went to that rally actually ended up voting for that person? Probably a lower number than you would think. So Donald Trump is a unique factor. Is it true that his stature in the GOP is throwing a wrench in certain things? You might be able to say so because it is true that now people are leaving the party and his own base isn't turning out unless he's on the ballot. But still, that's a problem that really just falls on the shoulders of the leadership within the Republican Party and nobody else. Not Donald Trump, not these candidates themselves even. It falls under the designation of blame of the Republican Party and their leadership. That's what it does. Sam Madsen said the Bronx district we flipped was Biden plus 30. That's great news. I didn't even know that because maybe if it was like Biden plus 12, that's one thing. But Biden plus 30, I mean, even when it comes to crime, that's an issue we're winning on. Allegheny County, which is where Pittsburgh is, they have a district attorney there that is now a Republican who won, which was good news. So we'll see. Apex Caliber says Long Island being all Republican shocked me. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's possible. it is possible that Long Island will vote all red in 2024. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. You'll probably have one county at least vote solidly Republican. But other than that, I mean, you're looking at it. Yeah, New York, there's a shift there. Hopefully you get some reversion upstate too. That would definitely help out a lot. Let's see, answer questions that aren't super chats. I'm doing it now. I mean, it's towards the end of the stream. Super chats get priority, but I will look at the regular chat as well. George S. says, Ohio Issue 2 passed going into effect. Recreational marijuana citizens are allowed to grow for personal use up to 6 plants or 12 plants per household. What do you think about that? I think it's just exemplary of the libertarian mindset that a lot of Americans do tend to have, and it's growing, especially in these younger generations. And I mean, you see a lot of Trump voters support it, and I don't think that it's really helpful. I think weed's the drug of the left. It really is. You know, I used to be more libertarian. I used to not have the same stance on it that I have now, but still, I mean, overall, medical use, that's one thing. But if you're seeing these advertisements and you're driving down the freeway and you see all these weed advertisements, it's like it's like not a serious country. It's just not. It just makes us look weak and dumb, and that's kind of a problem. Boris Davitsky says, hey, Rep, the other silver lining was Manchester, New Hampshire, mayoral election flipping red. I was an intern for the guy who knocked over 800 doors. Well, congratulations on your efforts. Definitely played a role somehow. But yeah, I mean, that's good. That's good. Overall, I would say that there are some results throughout the country that were positive. I'm not saying the whole thing was a mess, but still, like, it was underwhelming. It could have been better. Could I talk about RFK's chances? I mean, he doesn't have any chance. It really is just a question, who does he take votes away from? And the polls are conflicting on that. And I'm going to make an entire video about RFK Jr., probably sometime later this month, because I think it's an important issue that needs to be addressed. I will say he would have a viable chance at playing a big spoiler if you had Nikki Haley as the nominee. I will say that. Let's see. Ohio's a very libertarian state, just like Kansas and Kentucky. Well, Ohio voted to reject legal weed in 2015, like overwhelmingly. I think that just the anti-weed people just gave up. Like, that's pretty much what it is. Opinions on DeSantis messaging for Iowa and the great flipping he's talking about. Yeah, there's no great flipping. Most Trump supporters are not going to vote for DeSantis, even if he technically is ranked their second choice. Doesn't matter. It's like, oh, well, they prefer him to Nikki Haley. Wow, congratulations. Like, that's some big decision that they're making. But yeah, I mean, it is ridiculous that they actually think they have a chance. If they're proven wrong, they deserve to be mocked and humiliated, because they're just wasting time. And that was proven the entire time. I said he has zero shot in the primary. These people said, no, he does. Same people that will critique my predictions. By the way, it's possible Iowa is closer than people think because of how much they're spending, but Trump's still going to win it by more than 20 points, which will give him all the momentum going into the next primary, which he's probably going to win by 30 if that's the case. Trump Tucker ticket would be legendary. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. I'd like Tucker as an advisor in Trump's cabinet. I really would. I think he was kind of like a de facto advisor. He helped keep us out of war with Iran. He really did help Trump on a lot of different things just by his show. And people were mad about it. It's like, okay, well, all these people learn about policy through the National Review. Trump learns about it through Tucker Carlson. Like, why is this necessarily a bad thing unless you just hate Trump, which they do? So, there's a reason people saying DeSantis has a chance to go after your predictions. Exactly. Because they like to deflect, and they're wrong. Their predictions for the midterms were identical to mine in many instances, but they were happy that certain people underperformed so they could control the narrative. And then the narrative collapsed in real time. People just forgot about it. They understood that it wasn't just Donald Trump to blame. And they went from there and said, yeah, DeSantis, maybe they were window shopping. They window shopped and didn't like what they saw, so they're back on board. Okay. Maybe they like the idea of DeSantis. Whatever the media was propping up DeSantis to be, then they see him on the debate stage and he's just like, well, Florida is where woke goes to die. And then like whatever, and he gets the donors cheering for him and that's it. He doesn't really muster up these witty attacks. He comes off like a mix of Cruz and Rubio, but dull. He doesn't have Rubio's like faux charisma, and he doesn't have Ted Cruz's like wit and intelligence when it comes down to his rhetoric. So it just falls flat. It's like a mix of the two, literally from 2016, but like weaker across the board. So let's see. Would DeSantis' 6-week abortion ban hurt him on a national scale because of last night? I think it would. Now, he hasn't proposed it nationally, but the fact is that he talked about a 15-week ban and did it before the midterms. It didn't say he would have any additional restrictions. Now, for political purposes, he passed the 6-week ban, which I agree with. I'm not saying it's a bad thing because I don't support abortion. But still, when it comes down to it, it is going to hurt him in a general election because it will be used against him. Because DeSantis' record on the topic is a lot different than Trump's. You could say, well, Trump overturned Roe v. Wade. Overturning Roe v. Wade was not necessarily unpopular. It really wasn't. It's what happened after that that's really changed the dichotomy. Trump said in 2016, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and he did it. I mean, it was a poorly decided case. It should be a state's issue unless it's going to be banned nationally, which I wouldn't be opposed to. And from there, I don't think people entirely disagreed with that. The problem is what happens from this point forward. And Donald Trump is saying, I'm taking the step back approach on the campaign trail, whereas these people are just going on and on and on, like trying to do what they can to make it a big issue and going on offense, but not in like a way that's really helping out the major topic at hand. Cartoon Cynic for 20 says, what is your opinion on Never Trumpoids bemoaning Trump's COVID and vax response? I just heard some guy say that America still hates Trump because of COVID, which is absurd. Well, America hated Trump's COVID response because they believed that Trump was too lenient. Like that was the narrative back then. And compared to most other countries in the world, Trump did not shut down nearly as much. His restrictions were far less than a lot of these other countries in Europe or Canada or Australia were. I don't like his vax response, but DeSantis also shilled it 1,600 times. He vaccinated a disabled, 100-year-old war vet on TV who, died a few weeks after. Is it a political prop thing for it? This notion that Ron DeSantis is a hero on that issue because he, makes it his brand doesn't necessarily hold up when you look at the entire record. And Trump opposed lockdowns in April, late April. He was saying, liberate this state, so much so to the point where the left was writing articles about how Trump's tweets are unconstitutional. They're a call to this, that, and the other thing. It's I didn't think Trump's response was perfect. I also don't think it was the worst thing in the world, and I don't think it's something that voters really care all that much about at this stage in the game. Do I think if RFK Jr. was Trump's VP, it would help Trump win? I don't necessarily think so. It is funny because you will have people on the right that will hate that idea, but these were the same people that were shilling for the McCain-Lieberman ticket in 2008 that never really came into fruition. But I think Trump's VP is going to be a conservative Republican. I don't think it's going to be a Democrat or anything like that, which also rules out somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, who's a recent adopter of a lot of these, right-wing ideals, at least for one reason or another. Let's see. What do you mean by the vax response? Well, how he handled it, because it was something that was touted as an accomplishment for a while, and it should really not. Honestly, a lot of people were not on board with that for valid reasons, and we'll leave it at that. But Trump leading popular vote by 1.4. Yeah, I know. I think he's the favorite. I really do. Him not being on the ballot is hurting Republicans. Biden not being on the ballot is helping Democrats. That's part of why we're seeing what we're seeing. I'm just worried about what happens with the GOP after Trump. If they purge him completely, even if he does win, and they go back to the days of Nikki Haley, they're never going to win ever again. They're just not. It's not a popular brand of conservatism with anybody. It's not. If Trump does win, a lot of these like DeSantoids are going to be like, well, actually, it's only because Biden is unpopular. That's the only reason. DeSantis would have won by more, which is not true. I mean, the polls show that. Polls aren't always accurate, but 90% of polls that are not released as DeSantis internals have showed Donald Trump outperforming most, if not all, of the entire slate of candidates. RNC chair nominees, Lee Zeldin wouldn't be the worst choice given his success. He didn't run for it, but had he ran for it, I think there would have been an outside shot he would have got it. Maxwell says, do you think Ohio legalizing weed automatically puts it at risk of trending back towards the left? Razorfist seems to think so. It's possible, but then again, like Alaska has legal weed. Like you have these safe red states that will have it. I don't think it necessarily means it's going to trend back towards the left. Oklahoma rejected it, but it's basically legal in Oklahoma. It's very, like their medical laws are way too lenient, and that's not affecting that state. And I think a lot of people just smoke it anyways. Like these laws are not exactly going to affect a lot other than like the advertising for it, which is the main reason why I oppose it. So like, no, I honestly don't know if it's going to cause it to turn back to the left, but we'll see. All right, I think we're going to end the stream. It's been great, but I've been going for over an hour. I think we covered all bases. Sorry I couldn't stream with you guys last night, although it would have been a disappointing stream, so maybe it wasn't the end of the world. But nevertheless, that's it for this stream. I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.